Well, good evening, and thank you very much. I think I'm a regular visitor to Worldwide Wednesday, and I have spoken about the In Limbo project before, so I'm not going to go into great depth. I'll just give a very quick update, and it's going to be a bit of a 10 minutes of two halves. I'm going to speak first about the project and then guide you through some slides. I've slightly broken Tim's format in that it's not exactly 1.5 reasons, but there will be 5 themes that I will ask you to look out for when we get to the PowerPoint presentation. I'll share my screen for that. So as you all know, probably our project is not for profit. And everything we do is voluntary work. So I'm not here to speak just about myself, but I represent many others, starting with the 300 contributors to our books. There we go. The 60 people or thereabouts who trust us with their testimonies and updates on our website, the roughly 685 who sent us their short, poignant messages, which we published as voices, the 4,420 members of our Facebook group, and most importantly, those who share our faith but cannot raise their voice. And there are many of those for sure. We represent just a very small sample of the more than 6 million EU citizens in the UK and approximately 2 million British citizens in the EU who are still in a way in limbo. It is a relative term, as there are many aspects on which we now have a degree of certainty. We know who has what rights under the withdrawal agreements, and we know that more than twice as many people as expected applied to the EU settlement scheme. Most of them managed to do so before the deadline in 2021. But 2 years on, there are still many making late applications. There were many left behind. And that, of course, were the most vulnerable in society, such as people in coercive relationships, children, disabled or illiterate people. And we don't yet know whether this will cause them problems in the future when they might be deemed to have been in violation of immigration rules in the interim. So this is an improvement from the times when we were not able to plan for the future because we did not know what our rights would be a single week ahead. But it's still a far cry from any sense of certainty or safety or security. So our work continues as Brexit continues to negatively affect people. We continue to focus on the human side and aim to touch hearts and open minds by giving a voice to individuals and highlighting that while there are common themes, each story is as unique as the human it belongs to. Many EU citizens, such as myself, had their status confirmed under the Windrush scheme because we've been here since before 1989. And later this month will be the 75th anniversary of the arrival of the Empire Windrush, which should make us reflect on whether any lessons were learned from the Windrush scandal and consider whether with the EU settlement scheme, we're heading for a new Windrush 2.0 on steroids with knobs on. What a funny twist of history that the day after Windrush is the anniversary of that referendum, the effects of which are still unfolding 7 years on, and which turned all our lives topsy-turvy. The deadline for EU citizens to apply to the EU settlement scheme was on 30th of June 2021. My team and I worked flat out to ensure that we got as many applications submitted as possible. We triaged ruthlessly and made the tough choice to defer all applications for children under the age of 15 to July. That age was not a random choice. We prioritized those who might need to apply for student finance in the future when they would have to show that they were lawfully resident in the UK for the last 3 years before applying to university. So we had to think ahead for our clients who were in no position to guess what the future would hold for them. I will never forget how at 9 p.m. that evening, our task list was empty for the first time since I started the project in 2019 with a separate task list for everything that was to be done in July. And I told the rest of the team to log off while I completed my last in-time application submitted at 1:45 midnight on the 30th of June 2021 for a young lady with Italian citizenship. It is tempting to think that Brexit is done, people are settled with their new immigration statuses under the EU settlement scheme, and everybody knows by now what the new parameters are. But nothing could be further from the truth. Just last month, in fact, she's been calling me for the last month. She's just called me again a couple of days ago. A client called me who had passed, who I'd assisted with completing the EUSS application in 2019. She's trying to open a new bank account and struggling to prove her rights to the bank because the bank managers do not understand that the status is digital only and there is no physical proof. unlike in the EU and EEA countries where Brits are at least given residence cards. This after my team and I spent many hours teaching this lovely 65-year-old how to navigate the government website. Last week, I posted in our Facebook group to ask how people are feeling about Brexit 7 years after the vote. Within one day, I had well over 300 replies, and by the end of the weekend, it was over 400. Clearly, Brexit is still very much a topic to be discussed and far from over. Many expressed their sense of relief because they have left the UK on their own Brexodus. There is a hashtag for that, by the way, hashtag Brexodus. You can look it up, and there are many, many stories on Twitter. And now they watch in horror from afar, feeling calmer and safer now that they have left. And for some, the numerous little inconveniences add up to a soul-crushing death by a million paper cuts, as they have to navigate immigration systems and are reminded of how Brexit assaults their European identities. Each time they have to pay a customs charge for a parcel from Granny, which takes longer to arrive, or wait at the UK border, or have problems getting a job, or renting, or accessing healthcare, because they now have to prove their immigration status. For most, the sense of bitterness, resentment, hurt, and betrayal is unchanged. In many cases, it has worsened over the years, and there is a consensus of darkness, sadness, bereavement, uncertainty, pessimism, and anger. And little to no forgiveness for those who voted to leave the EU. And no, rejoining will not fix this. Please lose the re before the word joining. Before the UK can apply to join, it has to fix itself and become a country suitable for EU membership. We find it hard to trust. We are reluctant to make new friends in case they turn out to be leavers, and there are still many worries, especially for elderly or disabled people. Without physical proof that we have the right to live, work, and rent in the UK, discrimination has increased massively, especially in terms of employment, making it harder to get a job or stay sane in your place of work. And banking, making it more difficult to open a bank account or get a mortgage, and travel abroad has become a lot more difficult and stressful. There is open hostility against us EU citizens in the UK media and government announcements, and many have been verbally or physically attacked, repeatedly told to get out of the UK, but there is no support to go back to our country of origin if we are destitute here due to lack of employment. Even those who naturalized as British citizens don't really feel any safer for it or that they belong more. What is home is still a recurring question, and some members had conversations with the Samaritans. There was the lady who left in 2020 and was separated from her husband for 3 years until he could join her. And there have been a few divorces. And then there was the moment I found out about the fate of a young man who had contributed to our first book together with his mum, speaking about their plans to move to the EU in 2017, which they did. He was 21 years young in 2019 when he could not bear it any longer and took his own life. And what's worse is that I know that this was neither the first nor the last Brexit suicide. Okay, so as we go through these slides, and I'll move through quite quickly on the human cost of Brexit and its impact on those who exercise the EU treaty rights, you will see that there are 5 themes. They're just not exactly in that order or somehow interwoven. So there is, of course, the In Limbo Project. What it's all about is sharing stories and amplifying voices. These are the things we do. And we've certainly participated in the pushback and resistance against Brexit, and we've shown great resilience, and there is actually much to celebrate as well. I don't know if we have the facility to send out the slides afterwards, but if we can, then you will have all these links, and that's all our socials where you can find us. A few key dates. I think most of these you'll be familiar with. If you've never seen the testimony of Sir Ivan Rogers, it is weirdly compulsive viewing. He was, if I remember correctly, he worked in Brussels, and he's a conservative. But yeah, he very clearly stated what a disaster it would be. And this was in February 2017, before Article 50 was triggered. So nobody can claim that they weren't warned. We collected our testimonies in less than a month, or just over a month. Yeah, exactly 1 month, actually. And published the book within 12 weeks. Ask any publisher, they'll tell you that's not possible, but we did it anyway because we didn't know any better. what's significant is, I think, the resolution passed by Liverpool City Council from the 15th of January 2020. And we have a regular attendee at Worldwide Wednesday who was very involved with this. It was his proposal, and it declared Liverpool a European city. And it kind of got lost with the pandemic, but we're reviving that now because we're celebrating Liverpool European Festival. And I've already mentioned the end of the transition period, end of the grace period. So here are a few of the In Limbo voices that I mentioned before. Most of these were tweeted and put out on Facebook. That is only a small segment of that album, and each of them is an individual and how they were impacted. Each of them is one of those stabs in the heart that we've experienced. As you can see, we were thrust into the hostile environment with all those tabloid headlines, but we did push back. And I think the one benefit of Brexit are the friendships that we found and the amazing people that we've met, whether that's the people who've come up with the Yellow Rose initiative, Graham Hughes, who interviewed me, the many places that gave me a platform to raise our voices and to speak about our impact. There's Mike Galsworthy and Elena Remigi. You know, there's certainly, we can certainly be proud of what we've achieved. So in the In Limbo group, we created these wordles, and so we asked people to put in one word, how they feel, and they could make multiple entries. And the bigger the word, the more often it was supplied. So as you can see, in 2017, we were mostly betrayed. We've mostly felt betrayed, but also a little bit angry, disappointed, worried, and anxious. But by 2018, the anger had overtaken, and anger became more. And by 2019, really, exhaustion started to set in. The red and black wordle is from our friends, really, at Brexpats Hear Our Voice, with whom we collaborated to produce the second book, In Limbo 2, the Brexit Testimonies of UK Citizens in the EU. And a few more brilliant pictures of, there's the lovely Julie Ward, who was our MEP. The Hands Off My Italian Wife, that's the wonderful Cristina Tegolo from the 3 Million at one of the first marches in Manchester. We presented the In Limbo book to the European Parliament and also to the Italian Parliament, and we've participated in lots and lots and lots of different research projects. I was going to say the most recent one we joined, where we are a partner, is at the University of Murcia, but actually since putting this together last week, we've got another one that they've just asked us to help them find participants for their research project. But this one we're working in collaboration with them. So cast your mind back to June 2021. I've shown you those wordles, but we did the same thing again. And as you can see, settled status has not made us feel any more settled. In fact, we're very much unsettled. These are the latest statistics from the Home Office. You can see the 3 million were very inaccurately named, because actually over 7 million applications have been received. Just over 500,000 of those are people who've moved from pre-settled status to settled status. But still, you know, and there were some that are late applications, but still late applications still represent individuals. Certainly, there seem to be around 6 million of us, which is quite funny. As you can see, there are a lot of late applications, and you know, that means that people haven't managed to apply during the time period when they should have, neither during the transition nor during the grace period. So clearly the grace period was too short, and the Home Office is becoming increasingly stringent about accepting late applications, so they're not accepting all of them. There is help available, so if you want to direct someone to help, I would strongly recommend Settled. They also have a scheme for Ukrainians, and if you go on their website, you can see the help topics, and that just goes to show what are the things that most people have problems with. And it's very often to do with the digital system, because people can't access their rights, because they can't prove their rights, because they've only got a digital status. They don't know how to move from pre-settled to settled status. They don't know how to update the system. So the digital border and the digital barriers are a big issue. You can report problems to the 3 million and also to the Independent Monitoring Authority on Citizens' Rights. And the IMA has actually started taking the government to court, and there is going to be more litigation. So please do keep reporting things because they do get used. So the problems people find, well, they are mostly to do with the system being digital only. There was a massive issue in that the people would be entitled and in receipt of benefits during the application process. And then when their application is refused, they are no longer eligible to benefits. But the system wasn't updated and DWP wasn't informed on time, meaning that people have received an overpayment, and the DWP is now clawing that back from these people who can't afford to pay it back. People being charged for NHS treatment when they shouldn't be, and things like poor decision making. And they've announced a new funding round, but they've made it really difficult for organizations to actually bid for the funding and actually provide the service to help vulnerable EU citizens. The EU delegation in the UK also continues to have information sessions, mostly via Facebook, and there is a whole list of grant-funded organisations. Citizens Advice Liverpool is one of them. They're still grant-funded to a very small amount, but no longer sufficient to run a whole project. So their capacity to help clients has reduced massively. There has been research done on some of the EUSS's processes, and it'll be, if you're interested, you can see the discriminatory effects of the facial recognition software used by the EUSS and the problems with digital exclusion. Also in Liverpool, at the University of Liverpool, is the European Children's Rights Units, who've done a lot of work, in particular how Roma children are affected. And I could go on about that, but I should probably go to the last slide, which is really just to tell you about the Liverpool European Festival, which is happening right now, with events carrying on until the 23rd of June. There will be an exhibition at the end. There are open days at the Greek church, the Nordic church. On Saturday, the German church has a summer fete. And it would be lovely to see you at some of these events. And with that, I think I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And that was it from the In Limbo project. Thank you so much for letting me tell you all about it.